Good evening and welcome on in to tonight's part 3 of From Day 1. We have our lovely Art Bell waiting for us on the back burner. Gain.dg does need an S after the HTTP. So it's https://gain.gg/r/FDO, the letters of From Day 1. Alright, now with that taken care of, let's get to tonight's installment of Art Bell, Midnight in the Desert. The guest member is Blanche Barton, the High Priestess of the Church of Satan. So we now return you to the Great American Southwest and the 25 time zones with part 2 of tonight's Midnight in the Desert.
It does exist. I think magic actually does exist. I think that many things that we discuss in the paranormal world do exist. And what I don't understand is if you feel the same way, and I know you do, how can that not lead you to a curiosity about a maker, a creator, and Satan? All of those things being possible.
Well, that does not necessarily follow for me, because the way
I mean, you're going down that road. How can you not continue down that road to the ultimate possible conclusion?
Well, I don't need a maker. I have evolution. I have reason. I have rationality. I don't need a God that created me. If he did, he's an absentee landlord. And I've talked to people about this before, too. I can't force myself to believe in a God that I don't believe exists. I can't force myself to believe that some guy 2,000 years ago in the Middle East dying, if he did live, if he was an individual, and he wasn't just a compilation of a bunch of supposed fulfillment of Jewish prophecy, I can't believe that he has any bearing on my life as I live and breathe today. I'm the one who controls what I'm doing now. And if I really tried to believe in a God that was omnipotent and omniscient, and I could pray to, and he would pay attention to me, each little sparrow and each little butterfly and each little, grain of sand in the cosmos he cares about. Okay, so there's such a being. How does he let happen what he lets happen? How can the fighting continue? How can all of these bad things? And of course they say Satan. Okay.
They or me just might say free will.
But let me continue just a minute more.
Sure. Go ahead.
It would create such frustration and anger in me to believe in that kind of God. If I tried to, and I really tried to pray, and I really tried to understand, I would be homicidal, because I could not reconcile why this being who supposedly loves me would threaten me and manipulate me in such a petulant, petty way that I have to bow down and worship him and do what he tells me to do, or he'll throw me into a fiery pit for all eternity. I mean, what kind of love is that? And then,
I kind of agree with a lot of that. I really do. But what about the whole concept of an original creator and then free will? In other words, we're down here and left to do what we're going to do, and our ultimate, up or downville depends on how we do.
Okay, so my free will tells me that I'm a representative of Satan, because if that God created me with a brain, he wants me to have a scientific mind, a rational mind. He wants me to challenge. He wants me to be against self-deceit. And he doesn't want me to bow down and worship him. So I'm doing my job.
Well,
I'm not killing anybody. I'm not stealing from anybody. I have a very sound base of ethics
okay.
that I move from. I don't need a God who's going to threaten me or strong arm me
All right.
so that I'll do the right thing. I do it because I live in a society where it's expected of me, and I want the same respect from my other fellow creatures. And so that's the contract. That's the social contract,
All
like
right.
Rousseau talked about.
What?
I don't hurt you. You don't hurt me.
All right.
I don't need a God to tell me to do that.
Okay, what has Satan done for you that God has not?
He's freed my mind. He's freed my will. He's inspired me. He's strengthened me. He is a guide for me in my life. The whole anti-heroic Miltonian attitude of even when your back is up against the wall, when you don't have anything else in you, even when you've been demonized and put upon and attacked mercilessly by the majority, you still are prideful and defiant and creative and driven. And that's where Satan leads me.
All right, earlier I asked you if he conjured up the devil, and you responded that, yes, he did.
In my mind, he has let loose the gates of hell. There's a whole generation, 2 generations now, of people applying Satanism every day of their lives. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons why I'm on your show is, well, 3 reasons. One, because you've got a wonderful show, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be on your show. But also, people are Satanists all around the world now. It's a very popular philosophy, but a lot of times you don't even know when there's a Satanist working next to you, or teaching your children, or babysitting your parents, or you don't know that they're Satanists because they don't. It's not necessary for you to disclose that you're a Satanist. In our version of the world, if it does you no good to expose yourself, then don't do it. People are confused. They don't understand it. But I want people to know that if you find out that your coworker is a Satanist, that there's nothing for you to fear or get freaked out about. These are our ethics. These are our attitudes. These are our habits. We stick to our own most of the time. We keep our nose out of your business. As long as you don't try preaching to me, I'm not going to preach to you. Mm-hmm. You're not going to find Satanists on the street corners handing out pamphlets or knocking on your door and waking you up at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday or Sunday.
Good.
We figure we want the information to be out there. That's what the Church of Satan is here for, is to continue to codify and clarify what Anton LaVey said, keep his ideas pure, blending the poetic and the rational parts of human beings. And if you're interested in it, you will seek us out and you'll find out if it's the right thing. If it's not for you, that's fine. But if you know of a Satanist, I don't want you to overreact and say, I want you to understand and be able to have an intelligent conversation with them.
Mm-hmm. Just to be clear, your relationship with Anton LaVey was?
It started out, I was working in his, in the office in San Francisco along with other people. And as I began to know him, I began taking notes on. He was an amazing raconteur. He'd tell jokes. He'd tell these stories about his life and about the people that he'd known, and his lion and his leopard, and people that he'd known on the police force would come by and he'd talk with them. And I had extraordinary access. And I had a pencil and a tablet, and I started writing down some of these stories and some of the stuff that he was talking about, because I knew that he was an important historical man. He will be remembered, many, many years from now. And what he was saying needed to be written down. So I wrote the biography, and we became more intimate. Our relationship changed, and that's why the new Secret Life of a Satanist is, the last few chapters are materially different than the first few chapters. The last chapters are much more, I hope I don't become too maudlin, or I hope I don't break down the image of who he was, but it's much more intimate portrait of him as a man and what he struggled through in the last years of his life and how productive he was at the same time. And so I want people to know the strength that he had, because he was undergoing physical challenges as well as the satanic panic and legal challenges, and he he survived. He was strong, and right up until the end.
Were they coming after him legally because of what he said he was?
No, because of personal reasons. But of course, you remember the Satanic Panic of the mid 80s to the 90s. Early 90s. A lot of people may not remember, but it was an insane period of time. I mean, we had Geraldo and Sally Jesse Raphael and Oprah Winfrey with these people who were claiming to have been molested as children in satanic sacrifices and baby breeders, and they tore up a whole. Well, you know what happened in Manhattan Beach with the preschool.
Yes.
And the FBI finally did a thorough search of everything and said there is no international satanic conspiracy. But this was only after at least two documents were introduced into state legislation to ban the practice of Satanism as a religion. They, not Judaism, not Church of Christ, Satanism, which is a recognized religion in this country, recognized by in the Chaplain's Guide to the Military Services, and they wanted to ban it as a practice, and that's scary.
It never, of course, would have held up. Never.
No, of course not. And there's a lot of weird stuff introduced into state legislature, but the fact that they felt that they could have the impetus to, the backing to introduce it. It was pretty scary. It didn't go anywhere, but still.
I guess it was scary, to be sure. I mean, it's like the communist purge way back, right?
Well, and people were, their lives were broken. They got fired from their jobs. They were going through divorces, and people lost their children. They had child protective custody coming in and taking their children away, just on accusations. And finally, I think the court system and the insurance companies got tired of paying these bills for these recovered memories and these supposed counselors that were behind so much of it. But it was a time of suspicion, and the two elements that Dr. LaVey hated so much was that they would go on these shows, and instead of talking about real Satanism, they'd talk about some animal sacrifices or child sacrifices. And so the teenagers who were watching these shows and listening to this hysteria would say, ooh, I want to be like, a real Satanist. And so they would go off and maybe sacrifice a dog or something, and that would end up in the local papers. And Dr. LaVey loved animals. He had many, many wonderful animals that he had a great relationship with. And one of the tenets that he makes very clear in our satanic statements and in the Satanic Bible is you would not hurt an animal or a child because they're the most natural magicians. And instead of, waving the Satanic Bible around in disgust and saying, ooh, isn't this awful? They wouldn't read the book, and they wouldn't tell people that's what Satanism really represented. And he said, all of these animals, if there are animals being hurt or killed in this fashion because of, they think that that's what real Satanists do, these animals should be placed on Oprah Winfrey's and Geraldo Rivera's doorsteps, because they're the ones that are doing it, not us. They're the ones that are leading these people to do this. And he felt very sad about that aspect of it.
I once had a young lady on my show whose name was Patsy. She had devoted her life to the devil, to Satan. And she said that she would ensure that her, I think it was son, would be taken by the devil, as well as herself. Now, she wasn't just a caller. When she began as a caller, and I went on to interview her in depth. But this, I'm telling you right now, this gal named Patsy meant what she said. Now, I understand that that is not what you've told us about tonight, but how many Patsies are out there? Well,
there are people that use any number of contexts for their disturbances. They create fantasies for, I'm not a psychoanalyst, and I haven't talked to her. I don't know about her specifically, but I'm not qualified to pass judgment on her particular diagnosis, but I know people do a lot who want attention. and who, they may feel even that they have a real pain, or they have real memories or something, but usually it can be traced to something very specific, and it's a context that they need to put their pain in, and they need a counselor that can actually help them, not feed their fantasies, but actually help them move away from their fantasies into a productive life.
With what you've said, and I've listened to what you've said very carefully, hold tight, we're at this another break point. It's very difficult for me to distinguish between a fact and fantasy here. Magic is real, but the devil or Satan isn't. I'm Art Bell.
Midnight in the Desert via Skype worldwide. If on a computer, please be sure to use a headphone mic and call MITD 51. That's MITD 51.
All right. My guest is Blanche Barton. That's Blanche Barton, and she is the former High Priestess of the Church of Satan, as well as now the Chair Mistress of the Council of Nine. She was Anton LaVey's partner in life. I think that's probably a fair way to put it. And of course, you also have a child now. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So, again, I'm struggling a little bit with this, Blanche, because on one hand, you sort of lay out Satanism as humanism. But then on the other hand, you'll go down that highway saying, well, yes, some magic is certainly real, and much of the paranormal could be real, and certainly I've discussed a great deal of this, and that's kind of where you stop. You don't continue down that road. It seems to me once you've embraced the paranormal and the fact that real magic can be done, then you have to be looking at a power beyond human power, humanism.
Okay, let's try this. Okay. We start from the position that humans are rational animals. We're animals. That's the seventh. Our foundational document is the 9 Satanic Statement, and the seventh, if you will indulge me,
sure.
Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those that walk on all fours, who because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development has become the most vicious animal of all. And we can see what's happening because of that viciousness to animals all around the world. So we're selfish and short-sighted creatures. But instead of just leaving it at that, I could be an atheist or I could be a humanist, but there's a whole half of our brain that isn't addressed by atheism or humanism, because in Anton LaVey, for the first time in history, he reconciled the irreconcilable. He reconciled the poetry, the mystery, the magic of being a human being, of writing symphonies, of writing great literature, of having visions and creating great architecture and creating love, relationships, all of these fantasies that are human, that are a big part of being human. So he fed that into sort of a pomp and mystery of satanic imagery so that we can utilize all the power within us. And I don't see any irreconcilable there at all. The power does not come from an external source. It comes from me. It comes from you. It comes from the other people that are working with me for the same goals. And that is now being quantified, again, getting back to, recent books by Dean Radin and McTaggart and other people. It's now being quantified in a scientific way that there is a group effect when several people, lots of people are concentrating in the same direction at the same time. Mm-hmm. It does have a measurable effect there. And I don't understand it, and I don't pretend to understand the dynamics of it. I think that scientists will be studying it more and more. but we're storytelling creatures. That's what we do. If some alien came from another planet, imagine how weird it would look that we go to movies, that we watch these little boxes with all these stories on them, that we read these books, and they're all fantasies. They're all stories. Why do we do that? Because we're storytelling creatures. And we gain strength from these metaphors and these images and these practices of various emotions. And we like drama, we like symbols, we like passion, we like rituals and celebrations that bind us together and communicate our group values. And that's all that Satanism is, like any other religion.
I've got an atheist that I bring on the show from time to time named Matthew Alper. Very interesting guy. Maybe you heard him one time. Anyway, he wrote a book that I find fascinating, and I would like to describe to you the premise. The book is called The God Part of the Brain. And it basically, I'm not going to do it justice here, but basically it suggests that all human beings, and we include those who are found on otherwise uninhabited islands, natives that worship one thing or another, if the sun, perhaps, the moon, the trees, it doesn't matter, that human beings are programmed by something in our brain, or some part of our brain, that demands that we worship something, that we believe in some sort of deity greater than ourselves. And he thinks that they will eventually identify that part of the brain that causes this. I wonder how you feel about that, because it is true. If you look around the world, everybody, just about everybody, even you, worship something.
Well, that I hesitate with the word worship, except that I worship myself, but I don't worship something external. Just metaphorically, that's a poetic representation of me. That those images are a poetic projection of me. But yeah, I certainly think it's a fascinating study, the God part of the brain. I can definitely see that, because it is a near universal that people like to. And what I've credited to, and I don't think I'm alone in this, is that and maybe he even includes this part, when we're in nature, when we're trying to survive, when we were in our earliest stages, our brains were developing, our survival depended on seeing patterns, seeing the gestalt, seeing the tiger hidden in the trees. And so we look for patterns and we try to make sense of things. That's what we do all the time. That's the scientific part of our mind, is trying to make sense. And we like things to progress in beginning, middle, end. We like things to be just. We like for good people to get rewarded and bad people to go to a bad place and get punished. We like that. So we tell stories to ourselves that that's what's really happening. So yeah, I can see that would be a very interesting study. I would like to read his book.
I thought you might. All right, so I have a computer, and I have this thing called the wormhole, and they can go to a certain place and send me a message as I'm doing a program, like right now. And before I read you anything, what would you imagine the response to your being on the program is tonight?
Oh, I think probably people are very happy to have a real Satanist telling them exactly what Satanism really is. I would imagine, in my mind, that's the way I would like it to be. They say, oh, what an interesting young woman. I really enjoy hearing what Satanism really is. And now when I find out that my boss is a Satanist, I won't be freaked out. That's probably it.
All right. Well, I would say it's more of a mixture. For example, oh my God, Art, how can you do this? How can you put on this satanic crap? Click, goodbye. That's somebody scared. And then I got from, Roman in Indio, California. Absolutely fantastic guest, Art. Very intelligent woman. Really enjoying this. So it's either love or hate, Blanche.
Yeah, I can see that. People have that reaction to the Satanic Bible. Anton LaVey said that people will pick up his book and they'll read it and they'll either say, my God, I felt this way all my life, but I didn't know what to call myself. I guess I'm a Satanist. That's exactly the way I feel. Or they, throw the book across the room in disgust. It's one way or the other. And that's fine. That's great. That's the way it should be.
All right. So then why not call yourself a humanist and avoid all of this, everything.
Because that wouldn't be it wouldn't be addressing the essential problem that Satanism, calling it Satanism, represents. Satanism isn't just atheistic; it's anti-theistic. And it's not just a matter of, oh, well, okay, so that works for them. Okay, that's fine. It's not fine. People who are running our country, that are running our world, all around the world, most of them are basing their lives on irrationality and muddled thinking and scapegoating. And these people are leading us in certain directions, economically, socially, ecologically. And it's going to affect you. One way or another, it's going to affect you. And so Satanists, by nature, choose active opposition. You need something constructive for your life, not just a denial of something like atheism.
Choose active opposition. So is it called Satanism only to choose having that opposition?
I think it's to recognize that humans, I see Satan as a quintessentially human metaphor. He's the risk taker. He's the underdog. He's the one who triumphs, even though he's vilified. He's the solitary romantic figure, and it's a human. It's humans, not Jesus hanging on the cross and being nice to everybody. It's we've fallen from grace, both of us. Satan and humans have fallen from grace because of our self-determination and our pride. And instead of sniveling and whining, we stumble forward by our own wit and our resourcefulness, and we create whatever life we can with the people that we love and cherish.
Mm-hmm. Are there sins in Satanism?
Yes, there are actually. Strange you should ask that.
How about
came up with it.
Okay, how about commandments? Commandments?
Yes, our 9 satanic statements written published in the Satanic Bible are our codifying statements. I would say.
So you really sound like a lawyer.
You know what the final 9th satanic statement is? I think you'll enjoy it.
Oh, I'm listening.
Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had, as he's kept it in business all these years.
Yeah, well, there is that, isn't there? It is the ultimate threat that keeps everybody in line.
Yeah, exactly. And why do you have to have a loving God that strong arms people into doing good?
Well, God, historically, has a temper. Right?
Well, but
he struck people down. He destroyed cities.
You're a kid, and you're getting shoveled this stuff from your parents. They're telling you about this guy. Where does he live? I don't know. He lives in a cloud somewhere. We've got the space station up there, but they can't see him. Well, he lives more over that way. I don't know what he looks like. And kids are smart. They start asking questions pretty early on, and they understand when someone's avoiding the truth. And when they start feeling that mommy and daddy are not telling them the truth about this, then they start calling into question everything that mommy and daddy tells them.
Well, you are right. If you ask the wrong questions, even in Sunday school, you risk ejection.
Right. But how do you feel about mommy and daddy lying to you?
Well, I don't think I blame mommy and daddy, or that I would say they're lying, because they probably carry that belief that they're passing on.
Well, I don't see how any child can get past that. That's when the trouble comes. That's when you reach adolescence and you start realizing that maybe a lot of what you've been taught is not true. And all of those sacred values, maybe they're not real. And when you link ethics to the supernatural, that God tells you to do this, not because it's right or wrong, not because essentially it's good for civilization for you to make these decisions, but because some supernatural guy with a long white beard is strong arming you and threatening you if you don't do right, then that's not good for society. That's not a good structure. That's not a good foundation. It should be, because this is what is right for the world. This is how we bind together as a human a human race, you know?
If the world were to suddenly embrace Satanism, do you think that there would be far less violence, killing, and just as we're seeing so much, for example, people walk into movie theaters and just begin shooting and then take their own life.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff. Do you think that Satanism would calm some of this down?
I would hope that people of a satanic mind would be more, would understand the necessity of getting along with their fellow human animals. I wake up in the morning and I say, I will not kill someone today because I don't want to be killed. You know, I can tolerate a lot.
You have to remind yourself not to do that?
I do, yes. But really, I mean, I think if the world were suddenly, you know, filled with Satanists, which is never, ever going to happen because, again, you know, talking about different parts of the brain, we always have to have the 2% who are the leaders or the innovators or the risk takers, and the rest of the people that really would rather just get along and not think about things very much. You know, just tell me what to do, tell me where to go, tell me what to buy, and I'll be comfortable, and you tell me what to do. And that, you know, but the Satanists who stand out, the creative people, the eccentric people, the weirdos, I think that they would be better at running things because they would hopefully have actual discussions, not ad hominem attacks. They would start talking about things, not pigeonholing themselves and saying, well, I'm a conservative, so I have to vote this way, or I'm a liberal, so I have to vote that way. And that's a bad person over there. The Koch brothers are awful or evil, or the unions are awful or evil because they're in the other camp, and I don't have to listen to anything they have to say. I just have to listen to what my party tells me to do.
Right.
And that's how we've gotten into the trouble that we have.
All right.
Is because people aren't voting. They aren't voting the issues or the man. They're voting according to their party affiliation.
All right. Hold it right there. We're at a break. I'm Art Bell. This is Midnight. Enjoy. Will you partake of
To initiate a dialogue sequence with Art Bell, please coordinate your phalanges and call 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952-CALL-ART.
Well, all right. Blanche Barton is my guest. She was the High Priestess, their Church of Satan, and she is now the chairmistress of the Council of Nine. Blanche, welcome back. I would like to, if you don't mind, circle back. We sort of went right over it. What are some satanic sins?
Satanic sins. The first one, you will not be surprised to know. The first one is stupidity. That's the top of the list. Because humans are, as I say, tend to be very short-sighted and selfish creatures. I'm all for selfishness, but when you are so short-sighted that you don't see the consequences of what you're doing and the long-term consequences to the earth and to other humans and to animals, then that's just being stupid. And
a lot of those sinners out there.
Yeah. And the second one is pretentiousness, empty posturing. It's very irritating. And we, you know, Anton LaVey always had the idea that if you're a satanic priest, you should be able to take the garbage out. You know, you have to be able to come up with the goods ultimately. And he, you know, that's what made his philosophy so strong. What makes his philosophy so strong? Because he was a very genuine person. Whenever he would start when he'd have someone come over, a lot of times they'd want to talk about Satanism. He didn't want to talk about Satanism all the time. He'd want to talk about old movies or cars or guns or music, or characters. And, people were not disappointed because he was a wonderful raconteur and a fabulous musician. So if you were treated to an evening of music with him, you'd walk away very happily. But he would say these things, and when he sounded a little bit pompous or pontifical, or as he perceived himself to be taking himself too seriously, he'd undercut it with a joke. He had a whole repertoire of jokes, and that was one of the books that I wish he had been able to put together before he passed away, was a book of satanic parables, which would have been all of his favorite jokes.
Okay. While we're on that subject, and I want more sins, but while we're on the subject, it now has been 50 years since the Church of Satan began, and 20 years since Anton died in 97. So an obvious question is, how's the church doing without Anton?
Well, that's a very good question, actually, because we would have no way of knowing. He was the founder. He was the progenitor. Was this just a personality cult, or did he create a philosophy with legs that actually can stand on its own and lead people to greater interesting achievements and interesting things? And I think the answer is that we're doing great. We've got more members all the time. We've got more adherents all the time. We're being productive. We're getting things moving and shaking in the world. He was a very strong leader.
Do you proselytize? I mean, obviously you are doing that in a sense tonight. But I'm inviting that. But you don't knock on doors and hand out pamphlets. So how does the word get around?
Well, it's the tradition of the left-hand path is that you have to seek it out. It is a singular path, and it's a dangerous path. And so there are a lot of imitators out there. There are potholes along the road. But if you're drawn to Satanism and you like the metaphors and you like what you've heard of Satanism, if you find it intriguing, then, we have the website, churchofsatan.com. It's a portal for all the activities that a lot of Satanists are doing right now around the world. And it's got a lot of materials on there for what Satanism is and isn't.
You said it was a dangerous path.
It is a dangerous path.
Why?
Yes, it is. Because it's a singular path, and it will lead you into...
Yes.
It will lead you as close as you can get to madness. What I mean by that is, if you are inculcated with Satan is evil, Satanists are evil all your life, and you step into that world and you're not ready for it, then your very fear will act against you. You will conjure forth, because the whole idea is that we're conjuring things, we're focusing our energy on what we want to achieve. But you can undercut yourself. You can actually hurt yourself. And if you're feeling guilty, or you're feeling afraid, or if there's any residual ill feelings, and this is purely psychological, this isn't magical, this is psychological. When someone is doing something that deep down inside they're conflicted about, you can manifest it physically with pain, aches, headaches, stomach upset, and drawing all kinds of terrible things into your life. So it's not for everybody. As I say, it's a particular vibration that people find brings them joy, happiness, and inspiration. But if you don't find that from Satanism, run away, and run away fast.
You know what a Ouija board is, right?
Yes.
Okay, I don't think a Ouija board per se is dangerous, but I had a very, very bad experience with one that I will not discuss and never have publicly. I think that it is the intent of the users of that board that brings about some of the bad experiences that people have had. What do you think?
I'd say you're definitely on the right track with that. I would also say that, as I was trying to explain, if you have any residual doubts or fears or guilt, that's a good medium for those things to open up to you and start attacking you. But again, not from something outside. You're conjuring it for yourself.
Well, now be careful. Yes, perhaps you are conjuring it, but you at the same time admit there is something outside.
I admit that we that we create conduits for our own achievements and creating our own goals as we move through life magically. Yes.
All right. Some more sins. We've got two: stupidity, pretentiousness.
The third is solipsism. That means expecting everybody else to be like you are. You're a moral person, an ethical person. Mm-hmm. You have certain values. You're vulnerable to somebody that comes along and tries to steal your money because he doesn't have the same values, but he might give you a wonderful line to try to convince you to part with your goods. So you have to be on guard. That's the essence of solipsism. Okay. You have to be constantly vigilant and look through illusions that people are trying to, it's very Machiavellian.
Good advice, though. Anything else that would catch our attention?
Let's see. Self-deceit, herd conformity. Then the last one is lack of aesthetics. That's just a terrible sin.
Lack of aesthetics.
Yes.
Meaning?
That's right. Well, it's part of lesser magic, really. It's a way of applying aesthetics, and again, it does evoke a certain magic.
Use Skype with a headset mic if on a computer and call MITD 55. That's MITD 55.
It is. I'm Art Bell. And with me tonight is Blanche Barton. And it is evoking many comment, that's for sure. Blanche was the High Priestess of the Church of Satan. She is the chairmistress of the Council of Nine. And we have been discussing Satanism. It may well be that your view of Satanism, or what you thought you were going to hear tonight, is not what you're hearing tonight. You may be surprised pleasantly, or you may be scared. It's hard to say. I think there's a lot of both out there, frankly. Blanche, have you ever regretted being a Satanist?
Not one moment. I've enjoyed every minute of it. And that's an interesting thing, talking about 50 years of the Church of Satan. And one of the questions is, does it act as a religion should? Does it help you guide your life to prosperity and happiness? Does it help you work within a community? Is it just, put on black clothes, listen to heavy metal music, Marilyn Manson, and piss off your parents or something? Or is it something that can actually lead you through getting a job, going to school, having children, raising children, deaths, births? Yes, it does. And it's a foundation for a lot of people who have been lifelong Satanists now. And the most gratifying thing that happens to me sometimes now, and I'm humbled by it, is when people come up to me and they say, Miss Barton, I've read your books. I was a teenager. I was being rebellious. I went to Satanism and I found out what it really was. And it really changed my life. And now I'm a successful attorney or, video producer or, whatever they're doing with their lives, but they've made a life for themselves. They're married. They're not married. They have children. They're happy. And that's very gratifying.
All right. Are you ready to talk to the public?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
Should be an interesting experience. All right. On Skype is Matt. Hello, Matt. You're on the air with Blanche Barton.
Right.
Okay. Back away from your mic a little. You're too loud.
Is that better?
A little better. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Art, I have to say, tonight's show is very controversial, which makes for excellent radio.
Well, look, I'm not afraid of anything. I'll talk about anything that's interesting, and this clearly is so.
All right. Well, Blanche, first of all, I'd like to say I greatly admire your conviction to your beliefs. Obviously, it requires a lot of bravery and a tough skin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Matt.
Well, there are two topics I'd like to bring into the conversation. Number one, a little thought experiment. Hypothetically, if there was an evil cosmic entity, not necessarily the devil per se, but let's say in the very nature of the cosmos, there is a being that is pure evil. Would it not be that the best way for it to gain followers and supporters to do its will, to convince its supporters that what they're doing is actually for themselves, if that makes sense?
It does.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, and you're not the first person that has presented that idea, that the devil is ultimately, the liar, so you can't believe anything he says. But again, I use it as a metaphor for life. I use it as a representative of liberty. And if there was an absolute evil entity, and you could bring me proof that there was such an evil entity that was somehow fogging my mind, then that would be a very valuable thing to do. But maybe this creature that you're talking about, it could be God just the same. It could be someone like God who's got these people under his control, and these humans are giving me all this energy, and I make them worship me, and it doesn't matter to them. I've got it worked so that there's this other guy that I blame all the bad stuff on, and if they worship me and they give me energy, then I get stronger, and it doesn't matter if I kill lots of kids or make people hate each other or kill lots of animals, they'll still love me. So, I understand where you're coming from, but, it's a thought experiment that doesn't go very far for me.
Okay, that's a fair answer. And you've also you expressed that you admired cultural and industrial trailblazers, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, you might know that many businesses, like for example, Apple, in California, they're practicing mindfulness and meditation, which is principles of Eastern religions, belief systems that promote separation from the ego. Now, it seems that your beliefs are sort of contrasting that it's self-worship and, I guess, reinforcement of the ego.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly,
a lot of attachment going on here.
A lot of attachment going on, she said.
Well, there are, there's evidence that meditation and mindfulness can increase productivity. And, well, what are your, do you believe in karma? Do you believe in reincarnation? Is there even the possibility of such things?
That's a lot. Karma, I would suspect so. But let's ask, do you believe in karma?
Well, I hope that there are consequences. I think that the way we perceive it is you're asking for the consequences that you get out of life. You conjure forth what you get. So, yeah, there are definitely consequences for the actions that you take. As far as getting back to your idea about meditation and consciousness,
yes.
Yes, definitely. Strengthening your own mind, strengthening your body, being able to use yoga and strengthening the energies that flow through us. I personally am a great follower of that, and I think a lot of Satanists are, that we're bioelectrical beings. And if we can concentrate that, again, that's what magic is about, is concentrating our energies, aligning ourselves with our true core, and being able to release, bring in energy from around us and release it appropriately.
Okay. Well, if so, as I've listened to the interview, you think there is something to karma, but if there isn't, there is a spell that'll take care of it, right?
Yeah, we take care of that.
Yeah, all right.
We're sort of the cleanup team.
You also asked about reincarnation.
I have, again, my mind is open to reincarnation, quite frankly.
Really?
Because personally, I have had some interesting experiences along those lines, like you with the Ouija board. I don't need to go into them. But my mind is open to a lot of things. Like Lewis Carroll said, I try to believe 3 unbelievable things before breakfast,
Wow, your mind is open to reincarnation. that's a path unto itself. All right, here's something Donnie sends on the computer. Donnie and Sedalia, ask your guest about Anton LaVey's deathbed confession and accepting Jesus Christ on his deathbed. It's all over YouTube and the internet. So if the Church of Satan, if this is true, the Church of Satan is bunk.
Well, there you go. I am here to tell you that I was present in those final moments, and there was no deathbed confession. There was no hallelujah. I see it all now. There was no, oh my God, please forgive me. He had become more determined and more committed to his philosophy as he grew older, because he saw the way that the world was going, and he knew that he needed to be a voice for that.
Okay.
So,
Terry, somewhere out there, you're on the air with Blanche. Where are you?
Hello, can you hear me?
I hear you. Where are you?
I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, no, you're on the wrong line, then. That's our international line, my friend.
I did Skype.
Right. I'm very sorry. You'll have to give us a call at MITD51. MITD51 for North America. You are on 55. Let's try Lewis on North American Skype. Hello, Lewis.
Good evening. My questions are not judgmental, but just factual. Is the Church of Satan recognized by the federal government for a tax exemption? And I'm curious if they're convicted of a crime and are put in prison, do they get any special treatment? And finally, would she call herself a witch? I missed that if she said so. Those are my questions.
That's a lot of questions. Hold on. Don't go away.
Sure.
Let's get answers.
okay, the first question, yes, we are recognized as a religious entity by the United States government. We're included in the Chaplain's Guide to Military, to chaplains servicing military people, and that's updated periodically. However, we do not take advantage of our tax-exempt status, because one of our vital premises is that all churches should be taxed appropriately like any other business. So as an ethical point, we do pay taxes. The second question was...
In some sense, it's probably answered by the first. That is, if necessary, if you were put in jail, for example, you would get special treatment in terms of accommodating your practices. It sounds like if you're in the first, you're probably in the second. I don't know that as a fact.
We do have prisoners who contact us who say they're having trouble getting materials, and they do try to provide. It depends on the chaplain at the particular prison and the administrators of the particular prison. Some of them are very open. They should have the right to practice Satanism, at least get together with fellow Satanists and have their materials and perhaps rituals within the confines of the requirements of the prison. They can't have daggers and they can't have firearms. They can't have candles or certain things. But, just getting together to read the Satanic Bible. Usually most prisons are very accommodating. And yes, I would call myself a witch. I do.
Well, thank you for answering my questions. Thank you, Mr.
Sure.
Bell.
Thank you,
Right, sure. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. We have so many. Let's go to way back to West Virginia.
In jail.
Hello.
Yes.
You're on the air, sir.
Art, we've been talking about a lot of positive things about Satanism, but let's talk about satanic ritual abuse for a second.
Okay, let's.
In the 80s especially, there was a lot of cases dealing, we mentioned the government-related daycares and the military bases daycares. There was a lot of children that came out of there with STDs. And we was talking about the military, and, while we're talking about Satanism, while we're talking about the military, let's bring up,
Well, all right, let's deal with one at a time. One at a time, right?
Yeah, of course.
Satanic ritual abuse of children. That was addressed earlier, but Blanche, go ahead.
Yes, the McMartin preschool case, I believe one of the cases that he's referring to, was one of the most expensive and perhaps to date still the most expensive and extensive court case in California history. A lot of accusations were thrown around, including that the kids were moved during the rituals, that there were that some of them said they'd been put naked into a cage with a lion, and Chuck Norris was identified as one of their molesters. They said that they had their faces smeared with feces and blood and urine, and that they'd seen babies cooked and eaten. And backhoes were brought in, heavy machinery was brought in. All of this was supposed to have taken place in tunnels beneath the preschool by the people that were running the preschool. No tunnels were found, no lions were found. The most damning evidence that was found was toy rabbit ears and a candle. And I know that there was a lot of hysteria, but there were a lot of people going on shows to get attention. But it was
I remember this, sir, don't you? I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. But, I want to go deeper than that. Let's go deeper. There's, I've studied a lot into occultism. There is power. And, even going back to, that's why anal sex, analingus.
All right, there is power in what? There is power in what? Abuse?
There's power in the blood, the blood of children, the blood of ritual human sacrifice.
Let's find out. Let's find out.
And
right.
cannibalism.
Hold on. Let's find out. Thank you for the call. That's a pretty key point, I think, to address. He's saying there is power in abuse or in sacrifices or in... What about it, Blanche? Is there anything to it?
Well, this, again, was addressed quite keenly in the Satanic Bible, and I think it was a reaction to what Anton LaVey found with practitioners, or at least legends about practitioners of magic up until that point. And he was disgusted by the idea that someone would take an innocent animal. Even Aleister Crowley talked about animal sacrifice, and that someone would take an innocent animal and shed its blood to try to get some kind of power from that animal, when the truth of the matter is it's a substitute for a good orgasm. If you can't go into the ritual chamber and have a good orgasm, work yourself up into a real frenzy and let go of all that energy, let go of all your inhibitions, and become a real human being in the ritual chamber, you have no business trying to perform magic at all.
Okay, straight on. So that was all ridiculous. Well,
it was proven by the FBI to be ridiculous. A lot of people, a lot of police Cops for Christ is what they were termed, who had these seminars that they were selling to various police forces around the country to try to gain money from them. There were also a lot of counselors, religious or otherwise, that were getting a lot of money. And there were the talk show people who needed eccentric people to go on their shows and make a good controversial story. So everyone was gaining except the real Satanists, who would try to go on these shows to get another word in edgewise. They didn't give me the kind of time that you've been kind enough to give me, Mr. Bell. When we would get on, if we would even get on to tell what Satanism was really about, we'd get maybe 2 sentences, and the rest of the show would all be about baby breeders or a lot of insanity. Yeah. So we didn't fit the paradigm. And then they tried to, as a defense for that, they said, well, they didn't want to get sued by us. So they'd say, well, we're not talking about you. We're talking about bad Satanists. We're talking about traditional Satanists. Or they tried to make it into categories. And Anton LaVey said, no, there are Satanists and then there are nuts. Just like there are Christians, and then there are nuts. You can use the Easter Bunny, you can use Jesus, you can use Buddha to justify whatever crimes you want, but that doesn't mean that you're actually following that religious philosophy.
All right. Very quickly, Leonard on Skype. You're on the air with Blanche.
Yeah, I call to disagree with Blanche. She said that God makes you do what He wants, or do His will. No, God gives you freedom of choice. You can make your own choice. God doesn't force you to do what He wants you to do.
Well, He threatens you.
No, He doesn't.
Threatens you with eternal damnation and a fiery pit if you don't follow the rules, right?
He doesn't.
Oh, He doesn't.
Actually, He does.
I've heard the wrong stories then.
Satan is the one that makes you do things that makes you do things.
So in other words, anything you do that's bad, you can just sort of slough that off on Satan.
And that's the problem with scapegoating. That's the essence of what we're trying to get across here, is that when you scapegoat people, like some people are doing in the Middle East right now, then you can go do whatever you want to them, and they don't deserve your empathy, they don't deserve your sympathy, because they are unclean, and they are demonic, and they are possessed, and they are evil. So you can hurt them, and you can demonize them, and you can scapegoat them, and do whatever you want to them, because they are the others. That's very dangerous thinking. It's not an us versus them. I'm a human being, you're a human being, Leonard, and we all have foibles, we all have faults, we all have strengths.
All right.
And we have to get together to find out how to get together, how to solve problems.
All right, good.
And with that, we will leave them for tonight. Got a little further than I wish they would, but, well, to each their own there. We will return tomorrow for the final night of Satan Talk with the High Priestess of the Church of Satan. Until then, though, please like, share, and subscribe. Get us to the goal of 50,000 views and 1,000 subscribers. So Boxy over at Nexters will send us those packages, and of course YouTube will just start paying attention to us and make this feasible. CoinBase, Ibotta, and our new sponsor, Gain.gg. Coinbase and Ibotta, sign up, get your $10 free. GG will get your first 100 credits free. And then you can go ahead and with Coinbase Earn, 2-minute lessons, 1-question quizzes to get up to $100 in free cryptocurrency. Ibotta rewards you for what you normally do anyway, which is shopping. And Gain.gg will let you, whether you want to watch videos, fill out surveys, download apps to your mobile device, or anything else you'd like to do to be rewarded for your time. And of course, those are rewarded in either PayPal, crypto, or gift cards to any way you like. So until we meet again tomorrow here, like, share, and subscribe, be kind to one another, and it's always a great new world to release the Krakens as we march along here from day one. Have a great night and enjoy your rest. We'll see you tomorrow.